guys, pardon the PJs, it's my day off, so I am just taking a cozy approach and spending some time in the basement garden today. So what I wanted to check in on were my cuttings, and let's take kind of a look and see where these guys are. Some of these are only about 2 weeks old, so we may not be seeing any roots on these just yet, but I use this to multiply pretty much any of my stock, and I've actually tried my hand at rooting cuttings from my lisianthus. So if anyone here grows lisianthus, you know how tricky they can be to keep growing, and there are some gardeners who don't like to pinch because overall you'll have shorter stems. I've not had too much issues with the length of my stems when I pinch. Essentially what you're doing is you're triggering that plant to create more shoots. And so let me grab one here so I can show you. These guys are so far past where I should have planted them outside. So they're a little bit, got quite a lot of roots here, but they're still nice and healthy. So this is one I pinched probably 3 weeks ago. You can see shoots coming from the side here and then multiple coming from these tops. So I topped it. Let's see here. Where's it showing my top? I think this one's just extra precocious. Let me see if I can find one where it's evident where I topped it. Still really happy, really healthy. Some people are worried about rosetting when they see a lot of growth at the bottom. Sometimes it's just the plant putting off additional shoots. Here's one that's a little bit more evident. And these are my Dablini white variety, and I'll put that picture on the screen here. So here's one. I topped it right in the center here, you can see. And now we have 2 stems, and even like these lower sections, it can trigger the lower sections to put off their own as well. So this tray is planted these at the beginning of November. And so they're several months old. Normally you would start your lisianthus about 5 months before putting it outside, or 4 to 5 months before putting it outside. But I have zero patience. And I really wanted to get these started. And I knew I kind of had a somewhat ideal growing environment inside that I could maintain until it's safe to put these out. I have put some of my lisianthus outside, so when I get a chance, I'll take a video of that and show you how they're doing outside in the garden. They were having a really hard time. One particular tray was having a hard time with fungus gnats, and I just could not get them under control. And so I just decided to say, hey, you know what? Either these guys can survive outside and root and do fine. Lisianthus like the cold. They like to establish their roots when it is really cold outside. They don't like to establish roots when it's super warm. So I'm curious to see how they do. That tray was either gonna get tossed because it had a fungus gnat infestation that I just could not control, or it was gonna go in the garden and do fine. So even if just a few of those do well, I'll be really happy. I think overall I have about 1,300 lisianthus that are still doing really well. These are in the tiny 3/4 inch blocks, and they're doing quite well. I've gotta show you some of these. I just think it's hilarious how big they can still grow in these small blocks. Now I will say I am fertilizing these somewhat regularly with kind of a hydroponic solution. Honestly, I just steal my husband's because he buys large jugs for his plants. But right now these are about, let's see here, November, December, January, February, March. So we're about 4.5 months old. So these would normally need to go outside, but it's snowing here today. Thankfully we're getting less than an inch, so it shouldn't be too bad. And then our temperatures should be warming up. But lisianthus can handle about 20 degrees. And I have my beds outside covered with frost cloths with the Agribond 19, I think, 19 or 20. And so far they've been doing okay. Again, I was expecting some of these to not necessarily make it, but others, I mean, look at these guys. They are not at all super stressed, which is great. Okay, I just have them covered here with some Agribond and some T-posts. Hey, Walter. I really need to reinforce some of these tunnels here. I had opened them up a bit while it was nice to let them get some natural moisture, water the soil so it didn't become hydrophobic. But now I got some work to do. Got the arch there that I'm gonna put some climbing roses over. And then these guys, these beds I made last year with kind of a thinner cedar, and they did not love how much soil I put in, so I hammered in some T-posts last weekend. Well, it was nice. Took out some of the soil and reinforced some sides here. And you can see, oh no, I hope they are okay. But I've got some tulips coming up. I planted about 100 tulips here. My daffs are coming up. What are you? Why are you yellow? Interesting. I've never seen that before. Maybe they're just getting a little bit cold. But they seem to be doing okay. I just can't get over these guys. Starting to make their appearance. It's almost spring, guys. 12 more days. So now, if my ADHD brain can get organized here, let's see if any of these cuttings have rooted. I'm gonna try not to disturb them too much because I don't want to risk harming them in any way. I've also done it with the tops of my snapdragons. So I don't know if you can see right here, this little guy right here is the top of one of my Costa Silvers. And she's rooted really nicely. And so anytime I top my, let me get a tray down here. Anytime I top any of my snaps, I will stick those into some rooting hormone. I just use like a powder that I got from Amazon. It's worked really well. Stick them in some soil, hope for the best. Almost all of them have taken, which is really cool. And the nice thing about it is they're kind of free plants. So you bought the seeds already, and you're getting kind of 2 for 1. And then on top of that, you're also getting 2 sets of stems. So at least double the flowers, which I'm really thrilled about. I'll have to show you an update on my snaps as well. This might turn into a catch-all basement garden update, you know, lazy day for me. I don't think I've said in any of my videos, but I am a pediatric audiologist and I run our cochlear implant program. So this week has been a little busy. I've not gotten to spend as much time in the basement as I would normally like to. I just kind of like to be down here amongst the plants and tend to things and probably bother things more than I should, but it's just really nice to be down here. So let me get into this and see if I can find any roots. So, or on these Dahlia cuttings. So Sylvia. Now I need to be better about putting the dates on my tags as to when I took the cuttings. I am really garbage at doing that. So I think I only have a couple that show when I took the cuttings. I have one up there, I think it says February 18th. But they can take a couple of weeks, sometimes up to like, 15 to 20 days to really show signs of roots. So let's pop into one of these here. Now sometimes you can tell if your cuttings don't take, you can kind of see the plant wither away after some point in time. Now it's in soil, it's in water, it's getting nutrients, so you may not see roots for a while the cutting still looks nice and healthy, and that's totally normal. So this one is a Caitlyn's Joy, kind of looking in here. I don't recommend necessarily opening up your soil and seeing if there's roots super frequently because you don't want to disrupt the process, but I'm super excited, and I find it hard not to pester my plants frequently. Yeah, these guys haven't quite started to set out roots, but I believe I did these cuttings not last weekend, but the weekend before. So we're only about 2 weeks in. Let's take a look at Sylvia here. Looks like she's got a tiny little nodule there. It's gonna be probably impossible to see just on the bottom. She looks like she might be doing something here. But cuttings are just a really lovely way to multiply your stock of any particular flower or veggie. You can see, here's the top of one of my lisianthus. Nothing yet. I'm gonna kind of put it back in here. I like to make sure that the soil remains moist, and I do dip these into my rooting hormone. So we'll just have an experiment and see if that works with the lisianthus. I have seen other growers do this. Again, free plants, there's no skin in the game on this one. So now I'm gonna take you with me to the other side of the basement garden and show you how we take cuttings. Okay guys, so I'm gonna try and bring you in close. You won't see my face for this, but this is probably for the best with this acne flare that's deciding to happen. So the first thing, I wanna make sure I have all my parts and pieces. So I've got the tubers that I have in kind of some damp soil. It shouldn't be probably as wet as it is, so I'm gonna hold off watering these for a couple of days. But we have these really nice growths on our tubers. Same thing over here. And all of these are tubers I have taken cuttings on previously. So I'm gonna bring you in really close, and I may just take a recording here. You can kind of see where there's additional growths coming. When you take cuttings, it tends to trigger the tuber to kind of wake up some other eyes here and have additional spots. So you can see right here, I took a cutting from recently, and it's really tiny. I'll put a picture on the screen. There's already another growth point happening there. And so we're gonna take this little guy today. And the same thing on this one here. We've got this nice spot, but you can kind of see this little eye forming right there. And I just wanted to also show you, this is kind of two tubers. I didn't want to split because they really hadn't made too many additional tubers last year because I didn't get them in the ground early enough. I think my order got here late. But I've been taking a fair few cuttings here, and you can see all these additional growth points that are starting to pop through for Caitlyn's joy. This is one of my favorite ones last year, but we are going to be taking a cutting from Diva and from Cornel Bronze today. And I have some unicorn varieties coming this spring that I really wanted to hone my abilities to take cuttings before they got here, because the last thing I want to do is be missing out on additional cuttings I could take if I wasn't doing things correctly. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually clean my snips here and make sure that they're nice and sanitized. We're going to give that a minute. I use a Lysol wipe, or you could use alcohol. I've also used hydrogen peroxide before just to kind of dip them in and get them nice and clean. Dahlias unfortunately have a high rate of virus, especially with imported ones. Now I don't buy imported dahlia tubers anymore. I learned my lesson, and so I steer clear of those. But I'm also gonna have, kind of in terms of supplies, I've got my rooting hormone here. This is just the Take Root rooting hormone from Garden Safe. It has done a pretty good job for me. And then again, I've got my snips that are nice and clean, and I've got my containers in which I plan to put my cuttings. Now, when you're doing cuttings, you want to make sure you have a bit of a humidity dome. My husband is adorable, and he keeps all of these to-go containers for me for plants. He'll oftentimes come to me and bring me, he's like, is this one good for the garden? And almost always the answer is yes. So he cleans them and brings them down here for me. He is a massive enabler with all of this, so I am very lucky. So I have some moistened potting soil in this baby pool. So we bought this baby pool for $10 at Target last year for our dog Walter, because he likes to swim, but we don't really have too many places in our immediate area for him to do so. So we thought we'd give him a baby pool for the summer. Absolutely hated it. So it has become a very cheap soil holding spot. Keeps things a little bit more contained here in the basement. And it's a good space to throw water and get your soil ready. So first things first, I'm going to fill my containers with kind of this moistened potting soil, and I'm just using a Pro Mix. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Some people use vermiculite, like moistened vermiculite. Some people use the like the Root Riot cubes. I think all of it can work. So really pick your poison. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna put soil on the bottom and then use this as the humidity dome and see how that works. So let's get these guys filled up. I also love using my bench scraper. So I had an extra, I bake a lot of sourdough bread, and I had an extra bench scraper, and I love to use this to scoop and kind of mix in so that my nails don't get quite as gummy with soil as they used to. So we're just gonna press this down here. You want it to be pretty firmly in there so that it hugs the stem you're going to put in. And now there's a couple of different ways to take cuttings. I primarily use just scissors and try to get a little bit of the top of the eye of the tuber. I feel like that is most successful in terms of getting it to root. But you can also use the rocking method. I believe the account Impatient Gardens, did a video recently about taking cuttings, and there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can either rock the tuber and kind of gently loosen it from the eye or kind of from the top of the tuber. You can just take an actual cutting, not worrying about getting a little piece of the tuber itself, or you can take that cutting and trying to get that top of the tuber. So I'm gonna turn the camera around here so I can get you in really closely to show you what I'm doing. All right guys, first things first, I'm gonna take my rooting hormone powder here and just kind of put some in the top of the cap here, just like that. So the next thing we're gonna do is, let me grab my snips here. I'm gonna try and kind of wiggle this guy up so I can see exactly where it roots down at the bottom there. So I'm gonna grab, so I'm gonna come down here with my snips. I'm just gonna get right in here, trying to get just the tiniest bit of the top of that tuber there. Now we're gonna strip these bottom leaves off, and I'm gonna see how it goes, but sometimes I'll take one or two of these leaves off too, because they'll pull energy as well. And then the next thing, I'm gonna take my rooting hormone here. All right, and kind of dip it in to give it a nice healthy amount. So this is Diva. I'm gonna take Diva. Here's my little tray here. And I actually will sometimes make a little hole because you don't want to break the stem as you're trying to push it in. So I'm gonna push this guy down here as far as he'll go, kind of up to the level, make sure I didn't break that there, kind of up to the level of that top leaf, just like that. And then I'm gonna kind of pack the soil in around it so it's got a nice tight fit. And then I'm hopeful this is tall enough. Okay, with this little humidity dump, that's actually almost perfect. I may just prop it up a little bit because I don't want this top touching those top leaves there. So I may just prop it, and that way it gets some airflow as well. But that's it. And now I'm gonna put a label on this. I'll just get my garden marker and I use painter's tape, honestly. You'll see blue tape all over the place in my basement. But I'll put some painter's tape on this. I'm gonna try and put the date. I'm making myself accountable by telling you all that I'm gonna be better about putting dates on things. And then I'll put this guy under the grow light and hope he roots. And the nice thing about these clear containers is you'll be able to see the roots as they start to develop. So that's really fun. So let's get on to number 2 here. Before I do that, I'm gonna mark this because I will forget what this variety is and when I did it. So let's do it now. So we've got our painter's tape. All right, this is Diva. And today is 3/8. So let's get this going. So, and that's it. And if you have a bunch of tubers you want to take cuttings from, you could put them all, you could put multiples in here. I will caution you though, if you don't know the disease status of certain plants, it is good to keep things isolated and kind of clean between. Dahlia tubers can take a couple of years to show signs of leafy gall, crown gall, mosaic virus. So you want to make sure that you're maintaining really good hygiene practices when you're working with dahlias, simply from the disease perspective. So there's Diva, she's ready. And then let's get on to Cornel Bronze. Now this is one, again, this tuber really didn't make too many, kind of had a funny, so this was the mother tuber. And here are these tubers off of the main. So this one didn't actually make its own tubers, and typically these growths, if they're coming off of kind of the mother tuber, they don't really produce eyes that will make plants. So if you were to look at this tuber when it came out, if you were to divide it with these ones here, my understanding is that they wouldn't really produce anything. And that's kind of been true. This guy has been in this pot for probably 2 months now. I started these guys nice and early because I knew I wanted to take cuttings. But really you're only seeing eyes and growth points at the main crown here. So I wanted to take this opportunity to multiply this one because I knew it didn't make enough tubers last year, so it didn't really make any new ones. So let's see if we can kind of start fresh with some cuttings. Now cuttings will create tubers, but what I've read, now this is the first year I've been successfully taking cuttings. I tried last year and I was not good at it. So if you don't succeed the first year, please try again, because it's super, super satisfying when it works, and it will work for you. It's not that hard. And it's okay to fail the first few times. And sometimes, you know what? It's the plant's fault. It didn't thrive. So it's not your fault. It's the plant. So let's get into it here. So this guy is a bit taller than I would necessarily like him to be for cutting. So with this, I am still going to try and get the top of the tuber, but I am going to put this in a deeper pot so I can get the majority of the stem to this first leaf node here. I may even take these guys off with how much it has, so that I can potentially get little lenticels, I don't know how to say it, so that they can create more growth area. So I'm going to do it the same way I did before. Let me again sanitize my snips. This is a new variety. Give that a minute just to dry and sanitize for a moment. All right, here we are. My snips are dry and clean. Let's go back into it here. So you can see I kind of got the top part of that tuber right there. Now, if you're just taking a cutting from the actual stem, you can kind of clean up your cut if you'd like, but because I want this tuber piece, I'm not going to cut this any further. So let's kind of strip these leaves off. All right, so here we are. There's our cutting. Again, this is a pretty darn tall cutting. So let's dip in our rooting hormone here. I'm going to be very liberal with this. There we go. Okay, so now we've got our rooting hormone. I'm again going to just kind of make a little spot. Kind of making a little, whoop, and there goes all my rooting hormone. I'm not known to be particularly careful, let's be honest. And then I'm going to push this guy down ever so gently, and as far as I can get him without running the risk of damaging this one in any way. Okay, I think it's perfect. And again, this is like a nut container, so my husband really likes the sunflower seeds to put on his salads, and so he saved me this little container as a perfect humidity dome. So last step is to label and date these guys. And I will need to come through here with a vacuum since I am a clumsy person. And this is Cornel Bronze. And guys, that's as easy as it is. I think this whole container of rooting powder was like $15 on Amazon. Some people use the paste. You can kind of just, and some people don't use rooting hormone at all. So if you've ever had flowers that you've left in a vase for just a little too long and it starts to form roots, I mean, plants are absolutely incredible and they want to survive and propagate. That's how we have them. So sometimes if you just let them be in a healthy environment, they're really happy. All right, and as promised, I wanted to show you a couple of my successful cuttings here. So this guy, you can kind of see some roots coming out the bottom. Again, I don't want to disrupt the soil too much here, but this is a cutting of Caitlyn's Joy. I have probably gotten 6 or 7 cuttings off of my one kind of clump of tubers over there. I think it has like 1 or 2 tubers together, so it's not like it's a clump of 5 or more. Each tuber, I believe, can provide about 8 to 10 cuttings safely before you deplete too many of the nutrients from the tuber itself. These tubers are kind of starchy. They look like a big potato, and they have a lot of the same properties. And people used to eat dahlia tubers, and some people still do, which is kind of cool. So you don't want to deplete it so much. So if you plan on still using your tuber for that coming grow season, you might just want to be mindful of taking a tally of how many cuttings you've taken, so that way you know it's not going to be depleted in the field or in your garden or wherever you're planting it, in pots, in your basement, who knows. So here are kind of just some of the ones here. This is Diva, this is Caitlyn's Joy. We've got a Cornel Bronze. This guy is really nice and happy. And another Caitlyn's Joy. This one's a little bit newer of a cutting, but she's still really happy and got lots of new growth here. Another Diva. Again, this one's still a little bit new, but you can see lots of fresh, beautiful growth here. Another Caitlyn's Joy. Again, this is one of my favorites from last year. I fell in love with ball dahlias and water lilies. So I have a whole bunch of water lily dahlias coming this spring, and I can't wait to grow them. This is a Diva. She's very, very new in terms of her rooting status. Sylvia, which I showed you at the beginning with that big old root coming at the bottom. It cracks me up to see these baby tubers, basically super, super thick roots coming through. I just think it's hilarious. I think growing is really cool, hence why I do it all in my basement, because I can't wait for spring. Another Caitlyn's Joy here. Again, this is a newer one. And finally, another Cornel Bronze. Now, I believe we had a really weird winter last year. Oh, you can kind of see the big thick roots forming through on this Cornel Bronze, which I think is really neat. We had kind of a rougher spring last year, and so one of the farms I ordered from, I don't think I got tubers until like mid-May, which felt really late, and I got them in the ground right away. But then we had 4 separate incidences of really severe hail that kind of tore up the garden. So I don't think these plants had much of a chance to grow in a really healthy way. Towards the end of the season, they grew, put off green foliage. I think I got like 1 or 2 blooms from my Caitlyn's Joy plant. My Diva didn't put off any buds. My Cornel Bronze didn't put off any buds. So I'm really hopeful by getting a jump start and getting some really healthy cuttings in addition to the tubers I plan on replanting, that we'll have better luck this year, but we'll see. Plants sometimes have a mind of their own, and maybe they just wanted to establish themselves a little bit this year. But I'm hopeful that I'm hedging my bets here with all of these cuttings, so that way something will come up, right? And again, so I'd be mindful, try not to take more than about 8 to 10 cuttings from your tubers if you still plan on planting them. And I think it's really cool. I think it's cool that you can multiply your stock, especially with how expensive certain dahlia varieties, certain dahlia tubers can be, and how tough they can be to store over winter, that taking cuttings of the tubers that survive can be really awesome. Now I will say, I bought 3 blizzard dahlia tubers last year, and it turned into like 30 tubers, and I have 19 of them currently growing. I'll put a video in here, just kind of an update of what they look like, but my blizzard dahlia was absolutely insane. I bought the tubers from a backyard grower in Indiana who was selling kind of some surplus. I can see now why he had so much surplus, because they are very prolific. Had some beautiful blooms, and I'll be certainly growing those again this year, in addition to about, I think another 50 varieties. I have almost 100 tubers coming this spring, in addition to the ones I already have. I'll have to show kind of an overview of my spreadsheet of who I bought them from, when they're coming, how tall they are, and where I'm going to have them in the garden. So that might be another video showing you kind of what's going where. But all right, this video is turning into a bit of a catch-all, but I do want to show you kind of the upper effects of when you pinch. I've got 2 nice strong stems, and these guys are already starting to put off buds, which is a little bit early, but I will say, you know, snaps are awesome in that it's cut and come again. So I'm gonna cut these, put them in a little house bouquet, and then, you know, we will plan to put them out when it's a little bit more safe to. Also wanted to show you here, this is my pink pop dahlia. Can grow your dahlias to flower in the basement under grow lights, and they still look just as beautiful. But thanks for joining me today, guys. I really enjoy just hanging out in this space, and I appreciate those who hang around to watch others garden. I will say, for one, typically when I'm down here, I am watching other garden YouTubers and what they're doing in their gardens. I hope you have a peaceful weekend and get some green in your life, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining in, and thanks for being patient. It's been a hectic couple of weeks in the clinic, so I appreciate all of you who've tuned in. Happy weekend. Bye.